All right, Annie, welcome to the Love Pod. We are so delighted to have you here. And so, the work that you do bridges the ancient and the intimate, and you help parents and families heal not just their stories, but the stories written above in the stars. And as you've said, your mission is to help parents break generational cycles and patterns and parent from a place of alignment and love. So, today we'll explore how astrology can become a map for ancestral healing and a guide for raising the next generation with freedom and truth. And so, before we begin, I just want to ask you, Annie, what first drew you to astrology and when did you realize it could also become a tool for ancestral and generational healing?
Well, thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you. So I've always been very interested in astrology from a kid. I would like read my horoscope in those teen magazines, back in the 90s, the early 00s. And I realized it's because I never felt like I belonged. I have an Aquarius stellium, if anybody knows what that means. I just don't, I've always been kind of the black sheep. So I've always been looking for answers. I was like a personality test junkie, like the Enneagram, the astrology, like disc, all the things. And so it's always been in and out of my life. But it was actually at the very beginning of COVID. So my daughter was just about 2 at that time. My son was 4. I was feeling very frazzled by the state of the world. And I was really scared of like where we were going as a society and having young children in this world. So I was like, I need answers. Like I just need clarity. Like I can feel like my anxiety is winning here. And so I booked an astrology reading, and the astrologer, she said to me, she was like, in the next few months, you're going to meet a spiritual mentor or something that's going to like completely change like your life, your work, and like your trajectory. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's kind of on my radar. And a couple weeks later, my friend sent me a Facebook challenge of like this coach that was doing. And so I got on. It was like everything that I ever needed. She was talking about emotional healing and just like the pain in our body and mental health and everything being related to repressed emotions and memories and all of that stuff. And so I was like, I need to know like this modality. I need to learn it ASAP because it literally changed my life in one session. And so I became an energy healer. I started training under this teacher. I trained with her for 3 years. And then in 2023, and so again, the door had been opened because of astrology, right? She was like, it was like on my radar. So even though it was like scary and this is completely new, I was like, no, I have to do this. And so I did. And then in 2023, in advanced training, we were accessing our past life records, and I was accessing my past lives, and I discovered that I had been an astrologer in a previous life. And so I was like, ah, this all makes so much sense, like the pull to it. And then a couple weeks after that, I kind of got the download, and it was like, it was clear as day. It was like, oh, combine the two, combine the energy healing that you're already doing with astrology, because astrology is a map. And that's how I see it. And I think that my training in energy healing and karmic patterns first helps me with that, because I look at astrology as, that's it, a map to your highest potential, but also a map to your healing of, that's it, all of the wounds and the things that are in the way of that highest potential. So that's the really like condensed version of it.
That's really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm getting shivers as you're speaking about it.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is when you had your aha moment, it's like you just knew, like on a cellular level, you knew, like, okay, this is really cool. This is what I'm going to do. It resonates on every cell of my body. And what's so beautiful about it is that you're helping serve people by showing them how to read the maps for their lives. And that's amazing. That's such a
Mhm.
beautiful service. And all the better when you're interested in the work you're doing. That's very
Yeah,
cool. And
absolutely. Thank you.
like, so what does astrology really mean?
Yeah. So basically, when I'm looking at an astrology chart, there's specific markers in it that talk about that's your family heritage, like the IC, for example, and like the moon represents your mom and things like that. So for me, it's like I always look at a chart from that ancestral lens, because we don't become adults with a blank slate. It's like our parents and our grandparents, everything that we hear about, everything about money, about gender roles, about work, career, like all these things are conditioned into us, right? And so we can see a lot of that conditioning in a birth chart because that lineage is written there. So ancestral astrology is, that's it, my method of looking at a chart and then using that as a map and then using the energy healing to actually pull this out from people's bodies and rewire your brain to stop defaulting to, that's it, these conditioned beliefs and patterns.
That's really interesting. So it's really cool how the birth chart actually reveals not just our personal past, but also the lineages that we come from, because it is all truly connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Very,
yeah,
very
exactly.
interesting. And when you take a look at like family, constellations, and when you're looking at family charts together, which we're going to do here today, what do you pay attention to first? And are there particular alignments like that show shared lessons or karmic healing, like you spoke about, or just the flow of love through generations?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'm always looking at with my clients is the IC, which is the lowest point on the chart. It's basically a thick line. It's in between the third house and the fourth house, and it says IC. And that is basically your family roots. And from a karmic perspective, I see it as the cycle that you agreed to break and heal. Because my belief is that, as souls, we incarnate into specific families and specific soul groups with predetermined lessons and agreements and things like that. And so that tells me what your soul agreed to break and heal for your family line, which then, so I looking at that, then the rest of the chart kind of makes the picture, and then it starts telling me like why. So for example, then someone's deepest soul wound with Chiron could be complementary to that. It like fits, it makes sense. Or their moon, for example. So to give you an example with my own chart, my I see as Aries. And so I'm really here to meant to break the family cycle of like suppressing ourselves and like dimming our light, and our shine. And I'm actually an Aries sun and Mercury. And so I am very like expressive and I take up a lot of space. And, I was literally coded to do that. But my childhood experience was, Annie, you've got to be quiet, you can't be too loud and like really dimmed it. So my
Mhm.
experience was really dimmed it to live that out. And now I feel like I'm like, healing and like clawing out of it to like shine. But that's it. My chart, I was given the tools to shine. It's just the family experience first reinforce that wheel of dimming yourself because it's not safe to be too much and too loud.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more that we do come here with these soul families, and we choose our parents, we choose our children, and we come here to let go of those karmic ties that we have together. And usually it's through like those darkest moments that like this the brightest light if we choose to go into it with an open heart and realize that like we gave this all to ourselves for our growth, for our evolution. And usually it's so funny that sometimes the most challenging relationships can be confined like some of the most biggest blessings in them if we choose to go into them and not neglect them. But it definitely takes work and it takes courage and it takes that inner strength. And it helps when we have, guides and teachers to show us how to do that because we're not meant to do it alone. So, yeah, Annie, leading into my next question that I wanted to ask you more about diving into the healing of lineages. You work with parents and you heal those generational wounds. So, what would you say are some common patterns that you often see passed down unconsciously, and how can awareness begin to shift them?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. So let's look at it from astrology lens. So when we have strong fire energy in a family, typically those families, they're breaking the cycles like I was talking about dimming yourself and about kind of toning it down, fitting a certain mold to be accepted. So then the fire signs, typically what happens when you have those family lines where it's very much like get in line and just like, don't stir the pot type of thing, then that's it. You have a child who's born with just like all kinds of fire, zero F's given, just like I am free and I am loud, and it triggers all of that in the family line, right? And then we have our earth signs. So, for example, the earth signs, when we have heavy earth in family lineages, typically they are dealing with like money trauma, safety, things like that, like where you have to like keep the peace, a lot of like, yeah, scarcity wounding. So then that's it. You'll have someone who's like really earth heavy that will like come in and again bring all of that to the surface, right? And then we have our air signs. So air signs, I see them, they often they're here to break the patterns around silencing your voice. So, not like that throat chakra wounding, right? Not feeling safe to express yourself, breaking like beliefs and ideologies, or even like really organized like religion, belief systems that are very like rigid. So those families, because it's like they have all these ideas, they're very much ahead of the curve, right? Thinking outside the box. So if the family needs to kind of get out of the box, then yeah, boom, you'll have a child who is just like so far ahead of the curve. And then finally, we have water signs, which always incarnate into families where emotions are just like stuffed down, where we don't speak about things, no, like, we don't talk about any emotions. We just shove them down and pretend that everything is fine. Then that's it. You have a child who quite literally cannot do that. They're super emotional, big outbursts to force the family to deal with all these emotions that they've been suppressing for generations and generations. So those are some of the big patterns that I see, and that's where astrology makes it really easy because that's at the zodiacs, the archetypes, they kind of always have the same pattern. So that's another thing that I do look at when I'm looking at family charts. I look for repeating signs because when the signs are repeating, that gives me a good clue about what the family is working on together.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And
Mhm.
whenever a generation breaks the cycle or breaks the pattern, is it broken for all future generations as well?
So it depends. Um, yes and no. So when when parents are doing work and their children are under 7, then yes, it can be broken fully through them because so from 0 to 7, children are still very much connected with their mother and they are like the subconscious mind is still developing and all of that. So when I work with parents and their kids are less than 7, then yeah, we just kind of like pass the message along the line. We just like send it down and we can heal and clear things for them. When children are older than 7, as I was kind of telling you before when we were getting on, they start having their own thoughts and their own beliefs. And sometimes their own personal experience has already started to cement that. I really like to use an analogy of like a computer and think of your subconscious mind and everything that you inherit is like you buy a brand new computer and it comes with specific programs installed on it, right? That's your generational conditioning basically in your beliefs. And so sometimes you might never use those systems if they're there. Like I always use Safari. I barely ever use Chrome. It's just there. And so that's it. Depending on like if the person has started running the program and started using it, if they're older, then no, they need to do their own work. But if that hasn't been the case and that's it, children are very young, sometimes we can do it just through the parents. But the caveat to that is that our healing always does ripple out to families. And when I see the most is with parents upwards. So, for example, with my mom and I didn't have a very good relationship growing up. I'm a Capricorn moon, so my mom was very cold, very detached. She was present, but she wasn't emotionally present. So it's just like a whole other abandonment type of wounding. Okay. And so I didn't have a best relationship with her at all. I kept her very much at arm's length because she's very judgmental. My mom has never once gone to therapy. She's never like that I know of. I think she gets Reiki from her massages, but that's about it. Like she doesn't get any like healing or anything. But she is literally a different person just from my healing and my liberating our maternal line. Like she tells
Mm.
me, I'm so proud of you, like I love you, which like she never did as a kid. Like I would just hang up the phone, okay, bye, click. And my friends are like, what? You don't say bye, I love you? And I'm like, no, she doesn't say it. Why would I say it? And now she's like that. And she's just like, yeah, such a great grandmother. Like she's very, very different. And the only thing that I can see that has changed has been that I've liberated our maternal line from generations and
Mm.
generations of pain and of resentment and of losing themselves and all of these things that just were projecting a lot of, yeah, resentment and heartache towards motherhood.
I love that. And like that literally hits home for me too, because I've also had the hardest relationship with my mother in this lifetime. But I've also noticed shifts. Like the work that I'm doing on myself is also influencing her in positive ways. And so like it's truly an honor to be able to do this work. And what I realized on my own life journey is like I can't do it for anyone else. Even if I see others, especially close family members and loved ones who are living a certain way that I know is probably not like as most aligned as it could be, it's like I can't change them. And the only way that I can inspire them and help them is by focusing on myself and doing my own inner work. And that will hopefully ripple out, like you said. And for the most part, it usually does. And that's really beautiful that you've also experienced that directly. Annie, thank you so much for sharing. I also want to ask, like, whenever you're doing astrology readings for families, do you also then provide tools and practical, techniques that they can use to also implement healing?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my biggest pet peeves with astrology is when people just keep it like, you know, it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. And it's like, wow, I incarnated for this and I'm that. And it's like, okay, but what do I do with that information? Like, yay, I'm amazing. Okay, like, where am I going with this? So that's a big pet peeve of mine. So I always want to make it very applicable and give that's it, my clients ways that they can implement it right away. And I always finish my readings with like giving insights towards children, So to give you another example of what we've been talking about, I find that a lot of my clients, especially if they didn't have the emotional nurturing that they needed growing up, is we try to be for our children, we try to be what we didn't have. And we like, we always say like, I'll never do that, right? Like I won't be like my mom or whatever. So you kind of go hard on that. But the thing is that sometimes children, that's not what they need because they're their individual needs. So to give you an example, my kids, they both have Aries moons. They need to like they need to discharge their emotions first, and have that like anger release, and then they can talk about it. But so for me, what I didn't have growing up was that safe space to talk about my emotions. So when I first, started like, but they got older, I was like, how are you feeling? Like, can I help you process your emotions? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to hug? La la la. And it was very much giving them what I needed, but it's so far from what they need. It's like as Aries moons, I'm like, okay, go hit your pillow, go like throw it around, go like scream and let it out, and then let's talk about it. So that's what I always find really interesting and that I love using astrology to point out is that our children are so individual and they have their own individual needs, and that just taking the approach of like, I'm going to do better and I'm going to fix the things that I didn't have, sometimes it causes a mismatch. So that's a perfect example where I'll point out these things to my clients and be like, try this. And so for example, with your daughter, she has a Libra moon. And so, I'm not sure how much you've looked into her chart, but she having a Libra moon, she probably doesn't like to be like alone very much. She just wants to be around people all the time. And that's Libra moon, right? So let's say it was a client and like, seeing like, okay, well, I'm feeling like pressure. I'm trying to like do things. And, it's like having that lens to see that like, well, that's how she is. And that's what she needs to feel safe and being around someone, well, then it helps to reframe that in your mind, right? And not be like, oh my gosh, she's sabotaging me. I can't even have an hour alone, Not that that's what you're thinking, but just to give an example, you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think honestly, having children is just like it's a true fire of initiation and it brings up so much in us. Like it truly is called parenting because like we are learning so much and they are our mirrors. They are our greatest teachers and they're going to push every button there is. And it's so funny because it's like no one is really ever prepared to be a parent, but at the same time, it's like we have everything we need inside of us. And I don't know because I only have one right now, but I'm sure as a mother of two, Annie, you know that you could even use the same parenting style on each kid and they'll still all be so unique, They truly are their
Mhm.
own individuals and that's totally okay. And yeah, that resonates what you said about her moon and it's like she from the get-go, she's always wanted to be in our arms. We co-sleep, we're nursing still at 21 months. We had a home birth on Vancouver Island. And since the beginning, she's just always been so lucid and present with us and so affectionate. And yeah, it's not been an easy journey, but yeah, I'm sure we will be more insightful once we learn more about, her astrology chart. Okay with the But speaking, so before we dive into our family's chart, you're okay, Lieutenant. We can stay with Mama more. Doesn't want to be alone.
Well,
Yeah,
she knows
just
we're talking about her.
exactly,
That's another thing
exactly.
with Libra moons. They're very attuned to the energy, especially to people that they're very connected with, like their parents or to siblings, like family, people that they have strong bonds with. They're very energetically attuned. And that's something you might realize, like she probably like, she's literally looking to your facial cues to see your expression and to co-regulate with that. So yeah, it just makes a lot of sense what you're what you're talking about.
Oh, totally. Do you want to dive
Yeah.
more into the family charts now that we're on this topic?
Yeah.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so I was giggling because when I was pulling up all three of your charts, you all have a very strong Mercury and Gemini signature. So that Gemini repeats in all of your charts. And so that right away gives me a clue about that's Gemini karma. And so Gemini karma is around using our voice, speaking our truth, feeling like we don't have to dim and quiet ourselves, especially Nathaniel. So he has his IC is actually in Sagittarius, which is the opposite of Gemini. And so when I was telling you, the IC tells me about the family cycles, right, that we're meant to break. So if I would look at that, I would say, okay, well, he's here to really break free from like control, I guess, in a way, not control, but like rigid belief systems. So I don't know if he grew up in a household that was very like kind of in a box, or maybe even like religious or just very like this is how things are. And he's meant to like break free from that. Sagittarius is literally like the freedom. So he's meant to break free from that and really shake things up in his family line so that people can follow their hearts and what lights them up rather than feeling like they should be a certain way, right? So it's kind of like that I see in Sagittarius. And then yours is like I see in Virgo. And so interestingly enough, they kind of complement each other in the sense that Virgo, that tells me that you're meant to break free of the cycles of having high expectations or that perfectionism or just like again, things being very like a certain way. So it's kind of like similar but different, where it's like Sagittarius, it's usually like belief systems, very much like yeah, systems, but then Virgo energy, it's like it's just in the day to day and like perfectionism or maybe, your household, like it's like you can't drop a crumb, like everything's got to be very tidy or whatever, like that type of energy. So it's like interesting how it's like similar but different. And then your daughter actually has IC in Gemini. So then I feel like she's like the last like she's kind of coming in to like do that last kind of like cleanup, where hers literally that's it, breaking free for your family of speaking your truth and not hiding that and giving as much power to our intuition and our soul, not just our intellect, because that's also Gemini energy. We can oftentimes, those families put a lot of, it's like you get praise for like good grades, or like just like being the smart one, right? So breaking that cycle that like, well, there's a lot more to us as individuals than just our smarts. Yeah. So those are the cycles that you guys are all working with. So I was super curious how that lands. I know you were like nodding along.
Yeah, I'm nodding along because I'm like everything you're saying is like it makes total sense. Like both from Nathaniel's background and the background that I had, it's like God bless my parents, but like I especially felt that, like your mother, the judgment and the perfectionism, like nothing was ever good enough. But at the same time, I know that has nothing to do with blaming them because just like us, they're not perfect and every parent is doing the best they can with the tools that they have at the time. And so I know that it all comes down to my self-worth. And it's like I have to be my own inner parent and my own mother and realize that like I've always been good enough all along. And so what's really cool with all that you're sharing, Annie, is it's just like it hits home and that we're here to break free from those cycles. So I'm
Mhm.
really curious, especially with, Luciana's chart, like what archetypes or energies do you think that she's here to embody and teach us? And how can we, as her parents, help best nurture that light inside of her? And her name literally means light in Italian.
Oh, amazing. I love that. Yeah, definitely we'll go into that. One thing I did want to say, like your perspective on, seeing your parents, like who they are, and then it comes down to you, so beautiful and very Sagittarius moon of you, because it's just like you see the possibility and the expansion of it and not falling like victim to it, where that's it. A lot of times people, what keeps people stuck is like they have that awakening and they realize, and I was in there for a long time. I probably say I spent 2 years in that anger of just like realizing all these things and realizing how, my childhood wounds and all that. And it's just like so much resentment and just like blame. And that's where people can get stuck. But the way you described it, I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. It's so Sagittarius moon of you to see it as like an opportunity. And that's it, to take that and to be like, this is a way that I can expand. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, so
Thank
your
you.
daughter. Yeah, you're welcome. So your daughter, first thing that stands out to me is that she's an Aquarius sun and an Aquarius rising. So again, if we kind of remember I was saying how we have stories in our chart and the rest of the placements, it fills in the gaps, right? And it like supports that story. So saying of, breaking free of like, using your voice and not being scared to be that. So with her being an Aquarius sun and an Aquarius rising, she's literally here to break cycles and to be a disruptor and to basically do things like march the beat of her own drum. So as a parent, I think the best way to support her is to really encourage that and to support that and to, even tell her like, obviously as she gets older, she's like younger, but as she's gonna get older, it'd be like it's okay, people like don't understand you because Aquarius energy is often ahead of the curve. So I have Mars, Venus, my North Node in Aquarius, and this is one of my affirmations. I literally tell myself, I'm like, people need time to catch up. Like I'm ahead of the curve. Because when I was younger, I used to make that a wrongness. I would be like, people don't understand me, I don't fit in anywhere, I don't belong. And so now 30 years later having this lens of like, well, no, I'm ahead of the curve because I'm supposed to be a trailblazer, because I'm supposed to change things and not fit into the status quo. It's not a wrongness about me. So I think having as much of those conversations as you can to help her see that like she's not meant to fit in, and for you to be aware of that, because that's it, those, especially those teen years when they will come, it's like that's an age where kids, all they want to do is to fit in. And so of course, when they want to fit in, plus she has a Libra moon, so she might be more prone to like morphing and people pleasing to fit in, right? And to belong. And so that's really something that I think is so powerful for you to have that lens to kind of be able to pick up on like, oh, I can see that she's morphing herself to fit in, because that's one of the biggest woundings of Aquarius is feeling like the black sheep, knowing that we are the black sheep and not belonging. But that's it. When you're growing up and you're a teenager and that's all you want is you want to morph, and then you start morphing yourself to fit in and you lose pieces of yourself. And then it's it, being a Libra moon, you can add on people pleasing on top of that. So now you can, let's say, have that lensing to really support, individuality in your household, and to really support her in those conversations when that's it, it's going to eventually get to the point where she's like, all I want to do is to belong and to fit in. But it's like, you're going to know that her true path is to do that without losing herself, which is what a lot of Aquariuses do along the way. We lose ourselves, and then it's a whole thing because you have to like refine yourself. So I'm like, amazing. Like all these kids, imagine with these parents who have this information that can help them embrace themselves and then let go so that they don't have to refine themselves, right? Redo all of this deconditioning and who am I underneath it.
You put it so beautifully, and I couldn't agree more. It's like, they are who they are, and they don't need to try to be anyone else unless they grow up in a world that's conditioned. And like you say, they're trying to fit in. And I feel like I can relate to that so personally because I went through that.
Mm.
I know that I've suppressed my own inner light growing up because, I tried to fit in with the cool kids, or I tried to be like everyone else because I thought that's what we're supposed to do in this crazy world. And no one showed me otherwise. And so like you said, conscious parents who are not suppressing those parts of their children and allowing their lives to just shine for who they are and like acknowledging their unique gifts. It's like this is the biggest blessing that we can give our future generations, but that's not always easy, especially if like we're still in that conditioned mindset or still telling our stories like we are this person. And so I think the biggest thing is to like let go of the stories and let go of the identities and realize like just because I'm a black sheep or just because I'm not like everyone else, it's not a bad thing. We need to stop putting the labels on it and realize like whoever we are, however we are, it's about the feeling. It's like it's about, how we're feeling with what we're doing. And if it feels good, then go for it. But not a lot of the times do these children have that guidance and have that awareness. And so it's so important. And like for us with Luciana, we really want to keep her close and we want to homeschool her and we want to, we want to show her the way. We're not perfect, but we also want to nurture those gifts. And you spoke about it. Like she is so strong-hearted and free-willed. And I want to nurture that as much as possible and not try to change her, but also show her loving discipline along the way because children need boundaries and that's just a reality.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're not
Yes.
perfect parents, but we're walking this journey together and we're all learning together as a family. And so,
Mhm.
yeah. And
Yeah, I love that.
speaking of did you have anything to add?
Well, I was gonna say that, those boundaries that you were saying and having that like parameters, that's really what her Libra moon needs, because Libra is the sign of balance. And so it's like she does need that emotional connection, but also the balance of having, let's say, parameters. And, Libra's kind of like that predictability in a sense of kind of like knowing what to expect, because it's saying they're so tuned into the energy that those things really make a big difference. So I love that for her, absolutely. And another thing that was, kind of standing out for me with her having a Libra moon is that sh if you're going to homeschool her, I think that's really going to be a benefit for her, because it's going to, that's it, keep you as the, because I was saying how like Libra, they're really attuned to the energy of their people around them. And so it'll kind of keep her, attuned to like the right things, I guess I want to say, just like when it's like there's school, when you're in school and there's just so many other energies, right? And like the teacher and the things like, and if these things are not fully aligned with you, then like your child is just so picking up with that energy, then it's really easy to become, that's it, those like subconscious influences that you might not realize.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's why we want to be super mindful of who she's around, but not try to overprotect her in any way. Just be aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and also looking at our charts, is there anything you spoke about how like Nathaniel's and my charts like really complement each other, as parents and partners, but does it show anything about our shared mission here in this lifetime?
Yeah. So when we're looking at the mission, so I always look at the North Node because basically the North Node is your soul mission. It's like what you came here to do and incarnated for. And so Nathaniel's is in Gemini. And interesting, his North Node is like smack on his midheaven. So he's definitely meant to be like public speaking and like sharing a message and helping people expand their horizons and take in new perspectives, new points of views. Are very Gemini. So his North Node, like being smack on it, he's definitely meant to have that public like influence, And I thought again, interesting that it's like Gemini because yeah, you guys all have so much Gemini overlap. And so I think that that's really beautiful because it's from like lived experience, right? It's not just from like, hey, I'm preaching here this over and it's like all theory and just like blah blah blah. Like no, it's like actually like our lived experience. And then so interesting, your North Node is in Sagittarius. And so you're really here to, that's it, step into freedom and to be free and to like expand your own horizons and learn new things and take in different cultures and all that. And complements that Nathaniel's IC is in Sagittarius, right? So he's meant to break free of that and break free of like his family upbringing that was maybe, in a neat and tidy in a box. And so he's meant to break free of that. And that's literally what you incarnated for. So it's like your soul mission really supports his clearing and breaking that ancestral line. So I thought that was a really beautiful compliment. Yeah.
It's really cool that you're speaking about that because like I come from a background where I've had the privilege to like travel around the world since a young age with my family and I've lived in different countries like Italy and Australia and I have a brother in Mexico and I have like we've traveled and lived all over the world. And then I love Nathaniel and when I met him though he's never been out of the country and he's had such a different life experience and it was just completely different upbringing that he had had. But ever since our, divine meeting in this lifetime, we speak about this higher mission and this global mission that we want to share together. And it includes, homeschooling our daughter as we travel and live our purpose across the world, doing public speaking and, events and workshops as we're, sharing and expanding our education association that we're creating as a family. So we totally see ourselves not bound to one physical location. We see ourselves free and serving in different cultures and countries across the world. So everything you're saying, I'm just like, wow, astrology is so cool.
It really is, yeah. And I love that. I love how that's it. Like both of your shared north, like both of your north nodes and your shared missions, they complement each other. That's it. Following that in and of itself helps to heal both of your family lines. But that's it. You letting your family like letting go of that's it, those rigid expectations or like perfectionism and all like, right, with traveling and going to different cultures, like you've got to like leave your expectations at the door, right? So that literally helps you break that cycle from your family. And same thing for Nathaniel with his in Sagittarius, like traveling and expanding his horizons, breaking out of like that box and being free and like what lights you up. So I really love how, yeah, you're both of your missions to complement each other, but just by following them and like doing that soul work, you help heal your lineage as it goes.
I love that. It's so cool. And another big part of our mission is to help inspire others to live their soul purposes because we all came here with a very important purpose. And sometimes it just needs to be awakened inside of us. And it's not always easy to, take that path and do what we feel is like we always wanted to do. But like sometimes there was just a doubt in our mind or hearts of saying, how can I do that? It's not going to pay the bills, or that's not what other people are doing. So it's really getting over that mountain and realizing that you were meant to all along. And
Mhm.
it helps sometimes when we have a push and a hand to hold to help us.
Well, that's as I say, that's why I love astrology so much because I see it in my clients all the time. It's that they have this little voice inside or this desire to do something, but like you're saying, am I meant to? The bills, la la la, la, and like it's always in their chart. I'm like, yeah, like you're meant to, it's right there. Or on the flip side, all the time, one of the things that I love is when I give people a reading and they're like, oh my God, Annie, like I've had such a hard time accepting that about myself for the last like 20 years. And it's just like written there in your chart. Like to give you an example, I said I was a Capricorn moon. And so Capricorn moons can typically, be more like cold or like detached. Like we're not very emotional people at all. We like much prefer to like shove them down for later or never. We just don't come back to it. And so before I like knew this about myself, and of course with projections from friends and high school boyfriends, and I literally thought that I was like a cold-hearted bee. Like I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm just like this is no good. And then when I figured out my chart, I was like, oh no, I'm not a cold-hearted bee. I'm just a Capricorn moon. And it just like helped me stop being so hard on myself to be like, like, my goodness, you must have so much trauma with having zero emotions. And it's like, no, like I was coded this way so that I could be a pillar for other people in those times. Like I am solid in like a crisis, I'm like the cool and like calm one, right? And so to see it that way, to stop making it a wrongness and being like, my goodness, so cold-hearted, you have no emotions, to seeing it like, no, I'm coded this way. And it's actually a superpower in times of, that's it, crisis, or with my clients, when they're telling me very deep things about their lives and trauma and stuff. Like I'm not getting all caught up in it and like, hold on, I need to like take a tissue because it's not about me, right? And so that's it. Someone with more of a water moon would have a harder time to do that. But it's like it doesn't, not that I don't care, but it doesn't throw me off. I don't get caught up in their stories because of that moon that helps me be more solid. So that's it. Without astrology, I would be making it a whole wrongness about me. So that's one of the things that I love because it really is a permission slip for people in so many ways.
Yeah, I love that. And it truly is such important work when you go inside and you realize like you are as you are and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And you just start accepting yourself on every level and realizing like there's no judgment towards yourself. And that's so beautiful because when you are in that place, then you can truly serve from a place of alignment and unconditional love. And then the service that you're sharing is just like so heart-centered and very powerful. So I also realize like the challenges that we choose and the karmic ties that we give ourselves in certain lifetimes, it's like we go through that so that we can also have more compassion and understanding for the people that we are serving. And so that's really beautiful. I want to ask you, like for, the emerging charts that you see maybe a new generation of the children coming through, because there are so many powerful souls coming through right now. How are they different and what do they need from parents to thrive?
Yeah, so I love this question. I love doing this work. So the next generation, they are like super psychic because most of them have Pisces, Neptune and Pisces. And so that's like a generational planet. That makes them very attuned to, that's it, the energy. I see this all the time. My clients bring me like their kids and they're like, yeah, already seeing, spirits and auras and feeling energy and getting bad vibes from people, all the things. So this generation is super, super psychic, like very tuned in. And I think like my best advice is for parents to realize to foster that and to not discount it because I know from my generation, so I'm a millennial, and it's like my generation, we were very much like gaslit out of all of those things. Like I used to see spirits and used to feel energy, but I was probably, that's it, dismissed, gaslit one time too many. So I was scared. So I shut all of that down. And then that led to me being a very anxious adult because I didn't know what my intuition was. And so I was feeling the energy of everything and all the things, but I was labeling it off as anxiety. And so I wasn't like attuned with myself, right? So one of my like biggest goals and why I do this work is so that the next generation doesn't have to do that. So that they realize, hey, this isn't an anxiety. No, it's my gut talking to me, telling me that you are no good and I should stay far away from you, or like the situation is not good for me. I probably shouldn't be here. Like I can't think of, oh my God, I can think of so many times, especially in my early 20s and when I started living on my own, like so many times that my gut, my intuition was speaking to me, but I just brushed it off as like quote unquote anxiety, and I'm seeing that already. So many, I have a handful of teenage clients that I work now with at this moment, and that's it. They're so anxious. But then I look at their charts and I'm like, you're not anxious. I'm like, you have everything is concentrated in your third house, which is like all of like the mind. You're like super psychic. They have like grand water trines like Pisces and Scorpio and Cancer and all these things, and I'm like, you're picking up the energy from everybody around you, but it's too much for your body, and so your body is saying, hey, this shouldn't be here, this shouldn't be affecting us. And so the flag is quote unquote anxiety. So one of my clients, I was pointing this out and I was like, tell me the last time it happened. And she was like, yeah, my friend had just come and like basically dumped this whole story on me. She was upset. She's like, within 10, like not even 5 minutes, I had like a panic attack. And I was like, yeah, because you basically took on all her emotions. You're like, let me hold this for you. You feel better. She walks off by, right? So that's a really good clue. Like when people leave a certain situation feeling more drained, or leave a conversation with a friend and your friend feels great, but you're like, oh my God, I need a nap, then like that's it. That's the energy is influencing you, you're taking it on and all of that. So yeah, the all that to say, this generation of kids, they're very, very psychic, very in tune with their gifts, with their intuition, with the energy. So it's like we can best support that and not gaslight them. Like when my son is like, Mom, like there's some energy in here. I'm feeling like, or he says like, he's like, I feel like I'm being watched. And he has a lot of earth energy in his chart. So I know he sees spirits. And I'm like, okay, let's do like a cleanse of your room. I don't like sit there and be like, oh, it's fine. It's your imagination. Like, just go to bed, like you just like get over it. I'm really reinforcing that for him and being like, yep, that's possible. Or we had to go to a funeral last year. And so we were at a cemetery and he was like, Mom, there's a lot of people here. I was like not gaslighting him. I was like, yep, there are, but you can just tell them like, nope, I don't want to chat. I'm not here for this, and just like set boundaries. But I think that's the biggest, as much as we can validate their experiences, and because a lot of it is that's it, it's real and they are feeling it and it's not like just their imagination. And so then that will lead to adults who that's it, don't need to decondition themselves and re-find their way back to their intuition.
Yeah, you put that really beautifully, and really feel like it's important that people hear you when you say that, because that's exactly what they need, is for them to be fully accepted for who they are and the experience they're having at the time. And your children are really lucky to have you, because it sounds like you're supporting them beautifully through that. I totally remember too, like going through similar experiences, like you mentioned, growing up, and then I just shut it all off because it wasn't accepted, or it wasn't acknowledged. And so I think it's really important that these children coming in understand that these gifts that they have are so beautiful and so needed in the awakening of a new era. And we are totally in a huge cosmic shift that's going on right now. And so it's no coincidence that they're coming in. But I think, acknowledging that whatever they're feeling inside is valid and is important and it matters, and just guiding them through that by just allowing them to feel it, but also, showing them how to set boundaries, because that's really important too. And like, imagine a world where we grew up, where these children and even us as children learned how to, honor our intuitive gifts and how to use them for good and for, service. Like, what different world we would live in. And, even with Luciana, she is so sensitive and she is so highly intuitive. And, just the importance of showing her too how to cut boundaries, because sometimes like you can unconsciously pick up on other people's energy. And I can give you an example. One time, I was watching a movie with my brother and I was feeling really good before it started, but then all of a sudden I myself started feeling all this anxiety. And then I tuned into it and I'm like, where is this coming from? And then I realized it wasn't even my anxiety. I was picking it up from my brother who was sitting next to me. And I asked him, I'm like, are you feeling anxious right now? He's like, yeah, kind of. And so, imagine if we learned to kind of like I said, honor these gifts and use them for good. And yeah, just it'd be such a different world. And we are going into that era. And so I wanted to ask you this question before we are closing up here, Annie. If every family understood their soul patterns and lineage story, what kind of world do you think we could imagine that we could co-create together?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. It would be a world where people followed their passions, and so it's like there would be, I think, like less depression because that's it. They wouldn't feel wrong. Like for me, depression is, and I was someone who dealt with depression for, oh my goodness, like 15 years before I started healing. So I bought the story of like the chemical imbalance, but I really think it's like a soul imbalance. I think it's when your job is not in alignment, when you're living for your family, all of that, right? So I really think that if people were living with their charts and with their soul, that there would be way less depression. There would just be like more happiness because it trickles down, like you were saying about, being that like inspiration for other people, right? We can't change other people. We can be the inspiration. We can be the invitation. So that would make such a difference. That's it. I think there would be like less, it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a big bold claim to say, but I think there would be less like crimes and things like that, or just people end up in bad situations, like the wrong place at the wrong time, because your intuition would be like, no, maybe we shouldn't go there today. And so you wouldn't go there today, right? So then that would trickle down. Like, yeah, it's just, oh my goodness. I'm like, it's like everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's there's so much that would change, right? If we all
Yeah.
had that awareness. And we're awakening up to it, and dealing as well with the root cause, like, for anxiety or depression, and not resorting to other ways. But unless we're taught how to deal with it, like in natural ways, then, how would we know otherwise? So the more we're
Mm.
sharing our mission, the more it's going to ripple out. And so,
Mhm.
if listeners would want to get in touch with you or begin exploring astrology with their own family lineages, where could they start and how could they approach you?
Yeah, so everything is on my website. So it's anniebertrand.com. And so I have a free masterclass that talks about your family karma so that you can really see what did you incarnate to break. And same thing with your kids, make sure that you're on the right track and kind of get on that track. Because I always say to my clients, I'm like, the astrology is going to astrology, whether you believe it or not. And so you can either work with it and kind of go downstream, or you can be blind and keep swimming upstream. And so family karma masterclass, and then I also have my ancestral astrology course, which takes you through your whole chart, like your kids' charts, yourself. My clients are doing it with their spouses as well, and you really break it all down. And at the same time, there's a lot of healing involved with like rituals and exercises and things to like. Again, I don't like astrology just for the sake of knowing it. It's like, okay, great, we've identified this pattern. Now let's like journal and let's like release it from your body and everything. So. Yeah, those are the main ways. And I'm on social media. It's Astrology with Annie.
Wonderful. And for everyone who's listening as well, I'll put your offerings and readings for your social channels and website linked in the show notes. So, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Annie, or share with our listeners before we close up?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you so much for your time and thank you for opening up this beautiful conversation today. And yeah, for guiding our family through the stars with such love and clarity and passion. Your work really reminds us that we're not here to fix our lineages, but to free them. And so that our children can be born, not as continuations, but as completions. And so I really honor you and acknowledge the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was so beautiful.